All right, 10:05. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ben Frisch. We will get started here. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI, Return on Investment. This webinar is brought to you by, oh, by the way, Sam Evans from the Digital Service Squad is here as well. Hey, Sam.
Good morning, everybody.
Um, so this webinar is brought to you by your local Digital Service Squad. The Digital Main Street program is brought to you by FedDev Ontario, the province of Ontario, the Ontario BIA Association, along with the Toronto Association of BIAs. Here in Simcoe, South Georgian Bay, the program is managed by your South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center, with additional support from the County of Simcoe, the Town of Collingwood, and the Town of Blue Mountains. We're grateful for all of their support making this possible. If you have not reached out to your local squad to learn about all of the digital marketing supports available to you through Digital Main Street and beyond, you can book a 30-minute consult to get started. And Sam will drop the link in the chat if you don't mind.
Will.
Great. So we're excited to be here. We have a great webinar for you today. Digital marketing ROI, getting a return on your investment. So I was asked this question while speaking on a panel. That's where the idea came from. And the question came up, and I only had about 15 minutes to answer, I think, this and a variety of other marketing questions. So, there was definitely not enough time to dive into the complexities of this question, because I think the person who asked it, and it's not the first time I've been asked it either. I think when people ask this question, they want a simple answer. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist. They're looking for, should I invest in Facebook advertising, or should I do Google AdWords? But the reality is that there are so many variables, things like audience, messaging, what product are you selling, seasonality, even things like world events and perception all make a difference in whether or not, this advertising method or strategy will work over that one. The point is that what might work amazing for one marketer doesn't always work for someone else. Even if you have the same product, something, very similar, you might try the exact same thing as your competitor, or, something very similar, and it might be a complete flop.
Different strokes for different folks.
Different strokes for different folks, which brought up this great one. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about the A&W 1/3 pound burger. It's even hard to say. 1/3 a pound. But it's funny because it's become a bit of a meme. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was back in the 80s that the restaurant chain A&W was competing with McDonald's in their famous quarter pounder. And what A&W did was they created the 1/3 pound burger. And, thinking it's bigger, it's better. They even put it at the same price. So you're getting, better value. And it was a flop. It didn't sell. They even did focus groups and taste tests, and they found that people even enjoyed the burger more. They thought it was better in every way possible, but it didn't sell. And the reason was it came down to math. So the focus groups determined that consumers were not good enough at realizing that 1/3 is bigger than 1/4. it, I mean, it is a bit of a, stop and think about it, but it's simple fractions, right? But 4 is obviously, it's bigger than 3. People were just, putting that together, thinking that A&W was trying to sell them a smaller burger for the same price, and they were getting ripped off. And it was a failure. So this is just a prime rib example of why, I know there's a dirty pun, why achieving a marketing ROI is never a cookie cutter solution. A&W tried to do something very similar to their competitors, but one variable, one small oversight just changed everything. So today, previously I said I had about 15 minutes to answer the question. We've got about 45 minutes, now about 30, with some Q&A, hopefully, at the end of this. So I'm really hoping to unravel this question in more detail, explain to you why, actually teach you how to set the bar and exceed your ROI goals. Because the point is that the ROI is only something that you can determine based on your business, your products, and what you're selling. And so by doing this, we're starting to think like real marketers. And that's the really important point. So in order to start thinking like a real marketer and our return on investment, let's talk about just investing in general. The word investing, you can't think of your marketing as a cost or your advertising dollars as a cost. If you're not getting anything in return, then you're just not doing it right. Really, I mean, realistically, that's a fact. And so I'll admit that I made the same mistakes when I was starting out. When I was in my 20s, I spent I spent all of my 20s pursuing fine art as a career. And in doing so my portrait there is on the left-hand side. And I was selling, I was doing a lot of portraits and trying to sell commissions.
So that picture on the right, is that you try to do the portrait on the left?
Yes.
You messed them up.
That is actually my grandfather. And I'm still very proud. I drew that in high school, so it was not a bad portfolio piece there. But so in pursuing my dreams and trying to sell myself as an artist, I made the cardinal mistake of advertising, which is that I looked at the advertising spend as a cost. And what I did was I took basically my whole budget, everything I had, and spent a whopping $350 on one quarter-page print ad, not even a third-page print ad, which is bigger, as we just learned. And so the point of it was to sell portrait commissions. I didn't get a single phone call from that one publication, and so I never advertised again. I just stopped. I thought that was a waste. I'm not doing any more of that. So the problem was that I didn't do my homework. I was going to use the cliche of fail to plan and plan to fail, but this was funnier, I thought. But essentially it was that I didn't do any planning when to determine what is my budget, what am I trying to achieve, like anything. I just put money out there and thought hopefully someone will call me and buy a portrait. On the positive side, I did, it was a learning experience where I learned that print was out of my budget, although I, didn't realize that until after the fact, or actually years later. So again, common mistake, but it's avoidable. And here's where we can really kind of start shifting that mindset and thinking about your advertising as an investment. And not only that, but making that investment work for you. So this is a marketing plan that I pulled from the digital Main Street training videos, available digitalmainstreet.ca, for anyone who hasn't signed up, gone through the training program. And it's a really effective tool in getting you started, building that plan so that we can then determine what is our marketing ROI and how can we achieve that, and not only achieve it, but do better as we progress. So we're going to break down each of these sections: marketing objectives, target customers, competitors, your value proposition, marketing tools, your budget, such an important component to the ROI, and your KPIs. And then refreshing, it's suggested every 90 days. By the way, as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. We're standing by to answer your questions as we go. But moving right along, we're taking a look at this marketing plan for your business. So starting with your objectives, it's really important to think about, what are you trying to achieve? Is it more sales? Is it brand awareness, lead generation? Obviously, with regards to a return on investment, really kind of pinpointing sales is probably key. But there can also be, additional objectives or kind of primary objectives and secondary objectives, things that are just happening while getting more sales. You could also be getting people to sign up for your newsletter, and building up that list, right? That could be a secondary objective.
And with the brand awareness there, I think that's kind of the hardest one for businesses to grasp, because it's probably the hardest to quantify, on a KPI sheet, unless you're going to then go and survey your target audience who don't know you yet and say, how many of you have heard of us as a brand? It's, without getting, any sales differences or anybody saying, oh yeah, I heard of you from here. It's hard for people to understand, okay, well, I'll just get the name out there, and then, if you book them, they will come. The money will just kind of come flowing in through other revenues. My wife writes, she does copywriting for various companies. One contract she had earlier this year, they worked out that there's 18 different touch points before making a conversion, which is huge, but at the same time, each conversion was worth between $5,000 and $15,000. So there's no issue with, it's going to take us 18 times for somebody to, see us on Facebook, see us in a Google ad, watch something on YouTube before eventually becoming a conversion. So brand awareness, I think, is probably the least respected of all of the objectives, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle as to everybody's main objective, which is, well, I just want more money.
Exactly. Yeah. And very good point too about the ability to track where, where sales are coming from, as well as setting your budget. Two very important points that we will talk about in a little bit. But moving right along, the next thing you want to think about is your target customers. So who are they? You really want to kind of build a persona of that target audience, the demographics, what age range, are they mostly male, female, both? What do they like? What do they not like? How do they think? Do they understand fractions? What are their shopping habits? Um, you know, all of these things, the more you can understand about your customers, the more you'll be able to craft messaging that can speak to them, and processes that can make it easier for them to convert, and just really kind of speak their language, so that you can make more sales. And your competitors. So also important to look at who those are as well. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How are they advertising similar products? You know, you can take a lot of learning from something that's already out there in market, try to study it, analyze it, and figure out how you can maybe take from that learning and craft it into something for your own business.
And this links back as well to the first slide on variables. You know, what your competitors are doing might mean that you do something totally off the wall because nobody's doing that. And, you know, if you're the first one to be doing it, then you get that market. I mean, in the car industry, pretty much all car adverts are the same. But every now and then one stands out nicely from the crowd and it does something that, you know, they're not normally doing or what everybody else is doing, which is just driving fast through either sand or snow.
Yeah, I like it was Terry O'Reilly last week at the tourism conference said that that car ads are all the same because they're all breathing in their own exhaust. I thought that was funny. Um, but yeah, but that's a very good point though. Being different, how can you stand out? And that plays into your value proposition. What makes you unique? What makes your brand, your product unique? Is it your customer service? Is it your approach? How can you leverage that in your advertising to, really highlight what makes you different, what people will be attracted to, so that you can draw in those customers. And okay, so here's a big one. This one, marketing tools. So you want to, one of the problems with this is that, it's there's a lot of learning that can go into this. There should be a lot of learning that goes into this, because the question of where and how to advertise really requires an understanding of, the different capabilities, the different audiences of each of these different platforms. When it comes to Facebook versus Google, or Google AdWords, for example, there's very specific strategies around answering people's questions, right? People are searching in Google for answers, and you want to provide that answer with your ad. Whereas Facebook, you might have a little bit more creative freedom to just pique people's interest as they're scrolling through their feed. So, just like state of mind plays a huge factor into what platform makes sense, what tools that you might use. So I highly recommend, doing research on, what are the audiences that you can reach with these platforms? What are the capabilities of the platform? There's a ton of learning to be done. And that's a big part of our job too, is to kind of teach all those intricacies so that you can decide, okay, I'm selling mugs, for example. What makes the most sense? Where should I be selling my mugs? Is it Facebook? Because I can show pictures of it really easily. I can, we can do videos and share them with friends and family and groups and these kind of things, or does email marketing make more sense? But again, understanding the intricacies of that are really, really important. And because I find too, a lot of times clients will come to us, through Digital Main Street, Digital Service Squad, and they'll say, I want to be advertising on LinkedIn because someone told me that there's a really great opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity to be advertising on LinkedIn. But then you start asking questions, and well, are you B2B or B2C? Like, does it make sense to be on LinkedIn? And oftentimes, it might not make sense. Not to say bad things about LinkedIn, but again, it's like there's a very specific reason why and how you should advertise on that platform versus another. And so, understanding the best place to be is a big part of getting your return on investment. Because again, going back to my story about the print ad, I put all my money into a print publication. I didn't really understand, the ramifications of that. I didn't look at the audience of that. Well, I did a little bit of understanding who the audience was, but it just did not it did not turn out to be fruitful in any way. So what I should have done is kept going, find another marketing source. And if I was not willing to just throw money away, then I should have gone back, done a lot of research, found out, okay, what is the best opportunity for selling portrait commissions, and try that avenue.
And the skills you already have as well, might come into play as to where to advertise. If you're already, an expert on Facebook analytics, but you know nothing about writing copy for email campaigns, then maybe concentrate your time building the start on Facebook and using the analytics programs, or for the sake of 10 to 20% commission on it, maybe have Facebook, Google Ads, and that sort of stuff sorted by a third party like a digital marketing agency, while you concentrate on email yourself, or very personalized social media. So tap into what you already know. I imagine if YouTube was a thing 10, 15 years ago when Ben was doing his art stuff, and he could have started out with an arts channel on YouTube, and it would have been that was his niche in the market, kind of thing. It's using your own skills as well as learning new ones.
Trust me, I'm well aware of the mistakes I made. No need to point them out any further. But so let's talk about budget. So this is a big part as to why I can't tell you what is the best ROI. It's something that you have to determine for yourself. Sam was talking about that particular client who had maybe 18 touch points for making a sale, but they had a high ticket price sale item, right? So the return was great, but so they probably had to spend more to get that sale, right? So a lot of different factors come into play, like what are you trying to sell? Like what is the cost? What is your profit margin on that? If you're selling a cup of coffee, it's going to be a whole lot different to selling a kitchen renovation, for example, right? That's just how it is. So one rule of thumb, and take this with a large grain of salt, but one rule of thumb is between 5 and 10% of your revenue for B2C businesses, or if you're B2B, business to business, it's less, like 2 to 5%. So, definitely take into consideration making a sale. So if we use the example of let's say my portrait commission, if they were $500, let's say, then I would only needed one to make up that print ad, right? But it is a hard thing to sell, which also plays a factor into that. So one print ad is probably not going to be effective. People probably need multiple reminders and touch points, and building an audience over a long period of time would have been a better strategy. As Sam said, a YouTube channel might have been a great great opportunity back in the day. So definitely, I'd say like work with your bookkeeper, work with your staff, figure out what is an appropriate amount to spend to start with as a budget.
It's all about the Benjamins.
Yes, thank you. And then we've got key performance indicators. So how do you measure success? This is, you can't have a return on investment without understanding, where the return is coming from. Is it just by measuring sales? Is it newsletter signups, social engagement, video views? The more you can track, where your sales are coming from in terms of, what platform, what audiences, the better off you're going to be. It's such a vital component to understanding your ROI.
And one kind of flaw with relying on the KPIs, like it's so important, but at the same time, you also have to appreciate that they are a flawed metric, because often, like with Google Ads, for example, there's a very clear KPI as to this many people clicked my ad, so I was charged this much, and it equated to this many conversions. But that never takes into account the people that clicked it, never converted through that funnel, but another time either saw your shop in person and went in because they now know about it and made a sale, or they were one conversion through that ad, so you got charged for it, but that doesn't take into account they're now a customer for life, and they're coming back every month but direct to your website rather than needing adverts anymore. So it's always better than it looks, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, that's it. So and yeah, I think that's a great point that underlines the purpose of or the rationale behind just tracking all of your sales. Because I mean, if you start spending $1,000 a month, or $100 a month, let's say, on digital advertising, and you're not necessarily seeing that direct sales through clicks, but you might be seeing an increase in sales in store, at your bricks and mortar business, then you might be able to rationalize that spend or relate it to the increase in business in store. So keeping an eye on everything and how your advertising dollar is affecting just your overall sales and growth is really, really important. I will say too, it is also one of the main benefits to digital advertising, though, is that there are more tracking abilities. Even when someone might have clicked through your ad and doesn't buy, there are even tools that will allow you to continue to advertise to that person across the web, in the hopes that you can bring them back and make that sale.
And on the, KPI for video views, I'm just thinking like my background is in video production marketing. And, we've got one client in Africa who flies us over every 18 months, probably on average. And, it costs him tens of thousands of dollars to make this campaign. And he sticks it on YouTube and doesn't really do anything with it. And he doesn't care. It just sits there, like they don't pump it out. They don't really utilize it. But his main use for it isn't for, what we would think as mainstream video content. His like 95% of his return on investment from that comes from showing it large sales conferences to maybe 1,000 sales reps that sell African safari lodges all over the world. And for him, it's about wowing them rather than the actual customer who, still sees it on his webpage, but he doesn't care about really making a conversion through that particular video. It's more, the purposes that we don't think about. Whereas, you might see a video and it's like, oh, it's got 16 views, what a waste. But it's being used in other ways to, make back a hell of a lot more than he invested in it.
Very good point. So once we have like the marketing plan kind of outlined, it's also really important to think about your sales funnel. So we talked about this a little bit, but essentially, it's trying to make sure that we capture and guide all of those leads through the sales process in a very efficient way. Because you can have the most amazing, creative advertising that speaks to people, that motivates them, they're ready to buy. But then if they get lost in your website, then you just lost a sale. So it's a really key component just to any marketing campaign that I wanted to make sure I point out, like, it's another variable, right? It's another really key variable that if it's not done well, you might, like you don't want to think that your amazing advertising is the problem if it's getting lost. And again, lots of ways to track that process to improve on it. Google Analytics is an amazing tool for understanding how people are flowing through your website and for addressing any of those problems. Again, simplicity is key. So getting back to ROI, the one thing that is most important, obviously, is making those sales. And so I couldn't talk about an ROI campaign without talking about direct response. So direct response, that was where I got my start in marketing at an agency that specialized in direct response. And the difference between direct response and just general advertising are three key factors. So one, there is an offer. Two, there is a clear call to action. So let me back up. The offer being, $10 off, save 50%. Black Friday sale, big savings is a good example. The clear call to action is how someone can follow through on that. So buy now, again, that's where the importance of that sales funnel is really key. You want to make sure that when someone hits a buy now button, it's going to take them like right to where they can basically complete that sale. And if the fewer clicks you can do that, the better. And then oftentimes urgency is a big factor with direct response as well, because the fact is, you've got their attention, you've piqued their interest with the offer. All you need to do is give them that little incentive. This is a limited time offer. There's, only 10 products to go. So, there's only a couple left. Give them that incentive, light a fire under them to motivate them to complete the sale. And so, and the reason direct response is, I think, a really important strategy, or marketing strategy for specifically, a discussion around return on investment, is because it's immediate. It is, especially when there is that urgency, you're trying to make those sales as quickly as possible. And you see that immediate return on investment, and you can move quickly to optimize and to make changes to better the performance of your campaign. Does that make sense?
I get it. I mean, like, digital Main Street grant is, a perfect example of that. You tell people now, right, there's 5 days to sign up for this, and it's $2,500 of free marketing money, and people, are falling over themselves to get it. But, you tell them it 8 months ago, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll get around to it. And then all of a sudden the deadline's approaching, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now, like, I have to get that done, otherwise I'm going to be missing out. So if you haven't done it, get it done. You got till Monday.
Digitalmainstreet.ca. Get on over there. Get your applications in. Great plug, Sam. And again, tracking is everything. Understanding when you're putting marketing dollars out, what is it providing? Again, looking at as many opportunities as possible. Is it driving people in store? Is it driving newsletter signups, which are then converting? Just really understanding where the opportunities and where's the waste, I guess, is really, really key to building a campaign for success. And I'll say too, tools that you can use for this kind of tracking, definitely Google Analytics. A lot of advertising platforms have tracking, or analytics kind of built into them, reporting, so you can understand, okay, you spent this much. Here are the audiences that are responding. Here are the ads that are responding, the keywords that are getting click-throughs. Interestingly enough, we put out some digital Main Street ads recently on Facebook, and we did one that was I thought really different and unique. It was very 80s look and feel to it because of our digital service squad, playing off of the kind of A-team squad, versus like a very generic digital Main Street branded ad. And so far, the last I checked, the very generic digital Main Street ad was performing much better than the other one. And there's a couple, probably a few different factors there, in terms of one being very maybe a familiar brand with the digital Main Street up front and center, where the other one is a little bit more artistic. It's a bit busier. So yeah, we're only maybe a day into that, and I'm already pulling as much info and insight out of what's performing and what's not.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's people watching this being like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to be spending more money on marketing because I get, spend money to make money, but the tracking and the learning from it is key. And if, even if you don't have time to learn how to do it yourself, get somebody else in to tell you what's going on, because, you can spend all the money in the world, and if it's just, shouting into space, falling on deaf ears, then there's no point. So allow for a bit of that budget to be, if you're not going to learn it yourself and become an expert in Google Analytics, get somebody who's certified in it. And they can take care of, spend that money here, it's going brilliantly, but we can save you $5,000 here because that's just not working.
Definitely. And then let's talk about testing. So this is another really key strategy, especially with with direct response marketing. Oftentimes, and just what I said, about the 2 ads that I have running with digital for the digital service squad, it's, you know, often referred to as A/B testing. So you'll have basically two of a similar creative, or two similar messages, but with different creative. You're essentially trying to determine which one's better, and um, and you keep on whittling that down, you know, as far as you can go. I mean, essentially, you know, you can always be optimizing. So if this particular variation B is outperforming A, cut A. Don't need it anymore. That one's not doing you any good. So then now we take B, we make some changes to B, and you know, we run those two ads side by side. Which one's performing better? Maybe the new one is, maybe that change is not resonating with people. Cut it, it's gone. And just, you know, keep on testing, trying things, trying new messaging, trying new images. Again, it comes back to those variables where it's a bit of a, it can be a little bit of a roll of the dice, to be honest. You know, world events can play a major role sometimes. Actually, one funny story, it's kind of sad. I mean, when I heard this story that David Hasselhoff was making his big debut in America with his music, and he paid for this big concert, and it was going on TV. It was a huge deal. He spent a lot of money to air this concert and get his music out in America. And at the exact same time his concert went to air, O.J. Simpson was driving his Bronco down the highway, and no one saw it. So, I mean, again, you know, just really unfortunate, but an example of how just, you know, life and world events can sometimes just completely put in a roadblock or a car chase in your way. So coming back to, so once we have all those elements, you know, we've planned out the marketing campaign, and we've determined our budget, our KPIs, and we've run it. Now it's time to, you know, just keep optimizing, testing new creative, revisiting that budget, and seeing how we can improve our ROI. So in conclusion, only you can determine what is a good ROI. And you're going to do that through planning, through tracking, testing, and optimizing creative. And that was just, that was just in there from a previous slide too. And I thought I'd keep it because you're awesome. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I hope you found that helpful. There are, as we said, the grant for Digital Main Street, if you qualify, is a $2,500 digital marketing grant available. The deadline is November 30th, next Monday, this coming Monday, I should say. So we definitely urge you, if you are eligible, get your application in. But there are also lots of other supports, lots of other webinars going on for Digital Main Street, or excuse me, from your digital service squad. Next week is, does anyone know? Sam, you know what next week?
Does anyone call
branding best practices? I got it. I had it open. Okay. Branding best practices next Wednesday, December 2nd. Wow, it's December already. At 10 a.m. Karen Gibson is going to be talking to us about branding, design, and everything about branding, and best practices. So that's going to be a really great one. It's another free webinar to join. Are there any questions for us this morning?
Tumbleweed. I think you must have answered everything, Ben.
I think so. As I said, it was a bit more of a lecture approach to try and answer that question. So I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you're able to take that to build out a marketing plan and and set that bar and exceed your goals.
And what would you say is the kind of easiest gateway drug for people to start getting into online advertising? Like, I mean, obviously there's no right answer because as your first slide showed, every company is different. There's so many variables, but if people want to dip their feet in the water, what would you suggest?
That's a good question. I think that Facebook is, can be one of the easiest. But I would warn that, you still run the risk of the same problem that I found when I was starting out, right? Like you could try and boost a post for $20. And if you're not giving a lot of consideration to who is the audience, what is the messaging, how can they buy from you, all these things, then it might just be a complete waste. So that's, I mean, yeah, that is, again, it's the unfortunate part of it, right? Yes, it's easy to do. And there's a lot of opportunity there, Facebook and Instagram. But it's also, a bit of a minefield still, in terms of doing it well.
And I guess part of the issue that people face as well is it's hard to see what is waste if you don't appreciate that, marketing is such quite normally a very long-term investment. If you look at blogging, like blogging is one of the best possible tools that you can have for SEO on your website. And it's going to start out looking like it was a complete waste of time and money because it takes so many months for it to get ranked on Google and search engines to see your blog / your website as important to your target audience. But 6 months down the line, your blog might be ranking you as #1 on a Google result. So don't give up hope early on in particular. And if you're not measuring the analytics, don't write something off as a waste if it's not necessarily going to be.
Yeah, no, very good point. And something I didn't really mention, but certainly is worth mentioning, is that it's about the long-term gain, right? I mean, one of the images in there kind of hinted at it about planting seeds, right? Like you're not always going to be looking for that immediate response. Sometimes it is about long-term growth, long-term investments. So definitely something to consider when you're budgeting, when you're planning out your campaigns and that kind of thing. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. It doesn't look like we have any questions, so we will cut it there. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you in the next webinar. Take care. Till then.
See you next week.